1, 2, 3. This is the Cider Ranch Podcast. I'm Ben.
And I'm Mike.
All right, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Cider Ranch Podcast. We're at number 15 now.
15, man.
Holy moly.
Wow.
Yeah, so we have a very special guest today. He graciously created our logo. We use through all of our platforms. You can follow him at yoc.creations, where he posts art on Instagram, cooking photos, lots of really awesome, creative, inspirational stuff.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, of course. We'd love to welcome our very good friend, Mark Fleming, onto the Cider Ranch Podcast. How's it going?
Hello. Good. Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. Welcome, Mark.
Yeah.
It's an honor to have you here today. This is going to be an exciting one. I think we're all looking forward to having this chat today.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've been thinking about it for the last couple of weeks, so
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to it. It's good.
Yeah. It's always kind of nerve-wracking when you first start recording, eh?
Yeah, there's like a little bit of flutteriness.
Yeah, because we were having a really good conversation before, and we know obviously it's going to continue. Yeah. But the minute you hit record, it's like
It's like you kind of put on a bit of a stage, and then the first one you're like, it's all good.
Yeah.
It's like,
it's very similar to the pre-show jitters in the theater.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
It's I remember from our first episode to now, it's like, I actually literally will straight up just tell people, like, just skip past the first episode. Pardon me. Skip past the first episode, go to the second one, because that's when we do get our feet wet. That's a running joke.
Yeah. But should we thank anybody in specific? I know two groups of people specifically we should be thanking in regards to this.
Yeah, and you always forget to mention one.
I always forget the one that we ate earlier.
That's true.
Is that true? Yeah.
Yeah. So we want to thank our chicken tendies
and our pizza crust.
For dipping into one more Cider Ranch.
And we had a bunch of little Caesars earlier.
Yeah, it was good.
It was so good. And we had the keg ranch on the side. Dipped that puppy in. Oh my god.
Mark brought some pretty beautiful beers. Actually, you can't go wrong with Steamworks. It's so good.
Steamworks Hazy Pale Ale, so good.
It's good stuff.
It's really good.
Well, I wanted to ask earlier. What kind of language am I allowed to swear?
Oh yeah.
Well, okay, I mean,
I was calling Mike a simp bitch in the last episode.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. I was trying to remember, but I couldn't think of any.
I think instead of swears. I think instead of like a level of, hey, you can't say these words, I think it would be actually unacceptable if you didn't swear.
Yeah.
So if you don't lay out a fuck, if you don't let off a shit, a crap, and like that, we'll have a chat after, and we most likely will pull this from the podcast. It won't air.
Yeah. So what you're saying is dirty it up. Go back into my garbage man mouth.
Yeah. Right? Go back to before I had a bidet.
There is hardly. there's nothing off limits here, but I mean, I think I just kind of wanted to start and just say, like, so we were using the Hidden Vanish logo for so long, and then Mark came along and was like, hey guys, I know you're into this. I'm kind of dabbling in Adobe, and like you came up with that. It actually still boggles our minds. Like you came up with that logo so quick, and it is such a sick logo.
Thank you. Yeah, I thought that I hadn't learned of your podcast at all, and then I was on Instagram, and I think one of you had posted something about it on your personal page. And then I was like, I'll go and check it out. And the very first thing I thought when I went onto Spotify to find it was like, oh God, they need a better logo.
I was worried about that. I'm like, this tiny little podcast group, and also we get eaten up by Hidden Valley, and we're just done.
Hidden Valley's
well, in that circumstance, the worst you would get is like a cease and desist. They wouldn't give you a freaking lawsuit. Like, come on.
But then again, I would argue it's fair use because we did have that photo, and then we wrote Cider Ranch on top of it.
Yeah.
In a way, we're changing it. Would that be fair use?
I don't know.
It's kind of weird. Yeah.
All that kind of stuff is really gray area. That's why there's lawyers that we pay lots of money to do that stuff.
Yeah, we don't pay attention to that stuff.
It was so like, I mean, in terms of that too, and I guess you can tell people as well, like because like it's really kind of hard to describe your Instagram page. I know it's not just Instagram with you too, but like you've always, I feel like you've always kind of dabbled in that and just always been really artistic that way, and like been able to like just do that because I saw this one thing that you were doing on Instagram, and I think you had posted, and I'm gonna butcher whatever it is that you were doing, but you had like it was a ball.
Oh yeah,
and you were like moving around with it, but you were like keeping balance. And I just thought, I'm like, this is actually like because I told you, okay, like it kind of reminded me of like ASMR, because like it kind of had that very
soothing?
Sensuous.
Sensuous, like the soothing feeling, like, and just like it was just really cool. So like, how do you like? So what do you kind of post on there?
That specifically is called contact juggling, and that is just something that I've played around with for a few years. Contact juggling is becoming like definitely more and more popular. There's people that do like multiple balls at once. I generally only do a one ball kind of thing. But yeah, I've been playing with a contact ball for probably 3 years.
Okay.
Maybe a little longer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love it. It's a lot of fun, but it's a lot of practice. Like, it's so balancy, right?
But it's just with one ball?
Yeah, so I basically roll it on my hands, and there's different tricks and like illusions, basically. There's these things called isolations, and there's different ways to make the ball look like it's kind of floating in the air, but really I'm making sure that it's not moving. So it's like keeping something in time space. It's sort of similar to mime, right?
Yeah.
Like I've done some mime work when I was in theater school, and yeah, like the kind of concept of having an object stay stationary is very similar to a lot of mime stuff, except there's a real object there. It isn't like a fake thing that you're like a balloon, an imaginary balloon or something.
Right. That's interesting.
Yeah, you're actually dealing with substance where like mime is just like you said.
Yeah, it's very physical. And one of the coolest things. So in 2019, I decided to start the year off with a project, and I called the project Year of Creation. And I was going to do one thing creative every single day in a discipline of the month. So every month had its own unique discipline. And, I set out with the best intentions, and I managed to go for 10 months straight where I missed maybe 3 or 4 days.
Wow.
I didn't make it to the whole year, but, a lot of other things were going on in my life at the time. So it was good. But yeah, I started with the ball for a movement month, and then later on I did a dance month.
Mm-hmm.
And I brought the ball into that, and I learned, like I went and did some dance lessons, and I watched a bunch of dance videos and learned some different things, and turned the ball movement stuff into the dance, and that was where it really started to get super fun.
I love all the stuff in there too, and then you also got into like there was a lot of cooking those stuff too. That resonated with me too, because there was one where it was like a beef and broccoli one I think you posted, but they all looked delicious. But that one I was like, I could eat like 8 bowls of that because I love that stuff.
It looked amazing.
Yeah, I still love, like, really, really love cooking since that month. Like, I'd never really, really, like, dedicated any time to learning new things about cooking before, and I did that month, and I was just like, my mind was blown open with making my own food and how rewarding and creative an experience it is. And, I think it's really connected to being, like, nurturing to yourself too. So it's like therapeutic, self-caring and therapeutic. Like cooking has honestly been one of the biggest things that's gotten me through all the quarantine, especially at the beginning.
I was going to ask, I was going to say, I bet you that's probably something that you've noticed carries over very well.
Yeah, for sure. Like I put on some, like I have a Spotify playlist called The Chillest of the Greats, and I'm collecting chill songs from all of the best artists that have ever lived. And so I'll put that on, and I'll have a glass of wine, and I'll cook myself dinner, and then, maybe I'll have a little toke before. I'll get
not to have a little segue, but do you've got Comfortably Numb by Pink Floyd on there?
No, I should though. It's still a new playlist, so I haven't put on the classics. I'm mostly adding ones that like I've learned about or I haven't heard before, like new tracks. But,
what would you say out of that whole year? What would you say was the most rewarding thing you did?
The most rewarding single thing?
Yeah.
That definitely would have been the project that I brought to Burn in the Forest, for sure. That we called it Fragile Crystal, and that, even though that was for the month of sculpture, which I specifically chose for Burn in the Forest month, which was July. Mm-hmm. For people who aren't listening, if you don't know about Burn in the Forest, it's we live in BC, and Burn in the Forest is a regional Burning Man event, and Burning Man is a large event that happens in Nevada in the States every year. Not this year, but every year, every other year. And, that's been going on for a long, long time. And it's basically a big art movement of people that go into this place in the desert in Nevada for a whole week. that's the length of the event, but people are there for like a month building and tearing down afterwards, right? And there's a bunch of principles that have birthed out of that art experience, and now there's a huge worldwide community of people that have either experienced Burning Man or have experienced a burn event based on those principles. And basically, Burn in the Forest is one of those other events that happens. And I went to my first one in 2015 or 16, I think, probably 2015. And just had my mind like blown open to a lot of interesting things, and never stopped going back. And then I went to Burning Man for 2017 and 2018.
Wow.
So to get back to the project, we built this large chrysalis, a big wooden sculpture that you can stand inside of. And we programmed all of these LEDs on the inside, and it was all synced to a sound experience. You would put headphones on. And what we did to fundraise the project, because one of the really fascinating things about burn events that I've always really loved is that there's a principle of decommodification. So nobody's selling you anything anywhere. You know, like a lot of festivals that you go to, there's gonna be like a merch tent or a merch area, or like you can buy food at a food truck and stuff like that. Burn events aren't like that. It's based on gifting. So everybody from the community that comes and goes to a burn event, they bring something to give. And so there's a principle where you're not going to make any money off of doing a burn event. Yeah. And that makes it quite special, because there aren't really places in the world where you can like participate on that level that's outside of the constructs of like making money off of something. So I really liked that as an artistic and creative experience, especially bringing my own piece, which up to that point I had never done, up to last year, because it just like really synced with those things, and it felt really, really nice to like connect with my own art practice in that way.
I think that's really cool, because like a few episodes before we were talking about like, you know, personal growth and just being like genuine, and that like, because when you said that about it to me and Mike, like it was just the whole concept of, you know, self-growth and just like, you know, kind of self-actualization. And it seems like it's kind of like, you know, you're like, as a collective, people would go there to do that, to not just find yourself, but to like meet like-minded people that are maybe going through something or trying to figure themselves like that. I could see that being like a really like life-changing experience. And especially going to, after a while, you're probably making really deep connections with people and like increasing your social network, where it's just like, you know, like I think that would be really cool to attend. Yeah,
it's a very astute observation on your part, because there's definitely a whole heck of a lot of that for sure. Yeah. You know, I've been a part of the community for 5 or 6 years now, and I love those things about it. I'm definitely not one to say that it's perfect, right? It's got its problems and challenges for sure too that are unique to it. But like it's given my life so much. It's where I met my girlfriend Hillary.
Awesome.
Yeah, who I'm very much in love with. So
that's awesome. That's so cool. So did you both meet at a Burning Man event? Or was that at like
we met, so in 2018, I took a bigger role in the regional event. Up until then, I had done mostly just a ton of volunteering, which still I was doing, never making any money off it. But I took a bigger role in that volunteering that year, and Hillary was on the production team, which is quite a big role. And we met through that, and then spent some time together at Burn in the Forest in 2018. And then after that, you know, met up a bunch, and here we are now.
The rest awesome. Is history. That's super cool. I love stories like that.
Yeah.
Because you said because you're going to be moving to Toronto at the end of July. Yeah. And she's going to be pursuing her master's in, what was it? Sorry, again? It was like
she's doing a combined MA MBA at York. Yeah. And I'm probably not going to get this perfect, because I like sometimes I'm like, what is the actual title?
I had the text, right? And I couldn't even understand the text. I was like,
yeah. So her MBA is basically in like arts management, like arts business management. I'm pretty sure. Yeah. And then the MA is in performance studies.
Right. And you'll like professorship might be something she might consider too, or something like that.
You know, I don't know if she's ever said it straight up, but like I could totally see her like being like a professor at a university. Yeah. a very, very intelligent person.
Yes. Did she have any
scoring lots of points right now?
Yeah. Hillary, if you're listening, tune in.
I'm very vocal, like I really value Hillary and like our relationship, outside of the confines of our like intimate boyfriend-girlfriend relationship.
Right.
Like her as our relationship that we've had, like, and her as a person, she's just a very, very strong-willed and wonderful human being.
Yeah.
Who's just like dedicated to her passions and her interests. And isn't going to take anything else but.
That's awesome.
That's awesome.
I love that mentality.
When she sets her mind to it, she wants to go.
Yeah. She's determined and she has her values in check, and that's really important for me.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. For me personally, for my life. So obviously, I'm going to find that attractive in another human being. Right.
For sure. Definitely.
Yeah. It's, go ahead.
No, what were you gonna say?
No, I was just gonna say as well, because like in terms of that, so because you said that we just mentioned before when we were like munching on pizza and beers, you said that you had been like you'd been to Toronto before, so like at a very young age. So it's kind of interesting because it's kind of the whole Burning Man thing of being able to like experience new things. I kind of thought like it might be cool as well for you to experience a similar location, but from an adult kind of point of view, like you might experience things different this time around. Like
well, I'm guaranteeing I'm going to for sure.
Yeah.
And one thing that's always really nice to think about, because moving, because I've lived at least in the Lower Mainland for almost my whole life. I'm from Ontario originally, actually.
Again, I don't know how you did Vancouver. I don't think I could do it. Yeah.
But no, now that I'm a part of the Burning Man community, and that's already such a huge part of my life, I know that when I go to Toronto, like they have 2 regional burns in Ontario. Yeah. And I know a couple of burners that I've met through Burning Man that I camped with that live in Toronto or like Toronto area.
Yeah.
Right? So I know that I'm gonna like meet like-minded people through that.
Oh, totally.
And I'm not stressed out about finding new friends, even though I am a little anxious about it, right?
Yeah.
Because I'm leaving everybody that I've ever made friends with.
Yeah.
What about going back to the burning community a little bit?
Yeah.
What about that community really allows you to gravitate to that? Like what gives you that semblance of, hey, I want to, these guys are like-minded like myself.
So my first, like, it always really goes back to my first time doing that, because I had just come out of university and I went to a private Christian-based university. And so, nothing to disparage them, but there's obviously there's aspects of that experience that I wasn't able to show my full self, or I felt like I wasn't able to show my full self. And so, coming out of university is already going to be a kind of a transformative experience. And my friends, one year, they had been to Burn in the Forest a couple of years back. And then, one year they were like, hey, we should go. And I said, sure, great. Like, what's it about? And I looked it up and I was like, interesting. And I had heard about Burning Man like a long time ago, but only vaguely. I didn't really know anything about it. But I read the principles. There's 10 principles of Burning Man. And I was like, this sounds neat. I'll give it a shot. And I went. And when we first got there, I dropped off my friends and I had to do a loop of the whole grounds to go to park my car again in the parking lot. And I just driven around the bend. I hadn't gone very far. And this woman comes out and she basically gets in front of the car to stop me. I'm driving in this big field. She came over from her tent. She waved me down and she comes up and she says, hi. And then she looks at me and she says, can I give you a hug? And I said, yeah, sure. Right. And I get out of the car and I close the door and I give her a hug. And then she takes a step back and then she observed me. She walked around me very slowly. And she stared at me in the face and she said, you are a very beautiful person. And I could just feel the genuineness, right?
I was just going to say,
whoa,
it was so genuine and real. Yeah. And I was like, this place is magical.
How would you not want to be around people like that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because it's very rare to find that nowadays.
Yeah.
It really is. And I think that's so cool because she was probably saying it inside now because we both know you're a sexy beast, but inside and out, we know that you're a genuine person. And it's so cool that someone would just do that, not knowing who you are. And then all of a sudden just coming up and be like, you know what? Like, yeah, I feel confident enough in myself and know this person is here for a cause like I am.
Yeah.
obviously not to put you on the spot, Mark, put down all the 10. Like, do you know a lot of those? Like, what are some of those principles?
Yeah, I might be able to get all 10 out. But we talked a little bit about one earlier, decommodification. As a principle of decommodification, you can't buy or sell anything at Burning Man. You can't advertise any of your own products or anything like that, or business at a burn event. There's a principle of gifting, so everybody brings something extra to give to the community. Mm-hmm. There's a principle of radical self-reliance, which is like you take care of your own shit and nobody else is going to take care of your own shit. And that means you bring your food, your water, your campsite, all your stuff that you need to live for a day. And sure, everybody else will help fill in the gaps, but you also need to make sure that you're bringing water, right?
Yeah.
And that was really born, especially out of like the big burn in Nevada, because it's in the fucking desert.
Yeah.
You know, people are going out there for weeks and maybe they don't bring the gear that they need. And now you're a burden on other people. So radical self-reliance is another really important one. Radical self-expression is another really good one. Everybody's dedicated to expressing themselves in whatever way that they want. And that's accepted and valued. One that is really, really neat and special is radical inclusion. You know, the community,
I like that.
The community has a principle of including as many people as possible. You know, there's definitely a lot of criticism out there, especially right now. But you know, even well before that, there's a lot of criticism about Burning Man being very, very white. And yeah, it's very white.
Yeah.
And there's no excuse for that. Right?
Yeah.
But you know, there definitely is that principle of radical inclusion. So I think that's an important one. Some of the other ones I can't really pick off the top of my head, but they're there. Participation. You know, you can't go to an event and just bear witness, right? You got to be involved, right?
Yeah.
And part of that is in, helping build the event, or part of that is in the gift that you bring, right? Mm-hmm. But you got to be involved in some way. It's that community that like really kind of asks that of you, especially because of the decommodification. Nobody's making money off of this, right?
Yeah, right.
And that's another thing that like really amplifies the whole experience, because it takes it to another level. Like when I went to Burning Man for the first time, I saw 15-foot tall Tesla coils that were connected to a little keyboard, a little like electric keyboard. And you went up to it and you played keys on the keyboard and it would vibrate giant arcs of electricity on the frequency of the friggin' key.
Oh my God.
And you could play a song with a fucking Tesla coil.
That's insane.
And like, that's unbelievable. But like to think on another level of like a whole crew of people built that just for this, for everybody just to enjoy. It's got nothing to do with them making money, although I'm sure all these people have their lives work in stuff similar. But like, you know, maybe they're electricians or engineers, but they're also the people that built giant Tesla coils for shits and brought it to the playa, connected up to like a little piano that you can go
totally,
that's insane. And stuff like that.
A whole bunch of selfless hours made just for to help, just again for growth of other people. I think that's so cool.
Yeah. So like the radical the transformation that happens in these experiences is super strong, especially because, you know, obviously with any kind of community like this, especially these days, there's a lot of psychedelics involved, right?
Yeah. I was wondering when you're going to get to that.
Yeah. Here we go. You know, and like, you know, a lot of people, you know, you get it all whenever you talk to people, especially like my family or whatever. The first couple of times I told them about like where I was going, what I was doing, they're like, "Oh, it's not just like a bunch of hippies and drugs and giant orgies." And I'm like, "Well, there's that,
sure,
right? But there's lots of other stuff too, and it's very cool." Like, you know, the things that really, really gravitated me more and more to the community, especially after my first experience, were like similar experiences to that woman that I met, and the art and the self-expression. And then my very first burn in the forest, I had a super transformative mushroom experience. Just got my whole world cracked.
So let's get into this, because I know we were talking about this a little bit before we started.
Yeah.
So you had mentioned that you had a mushroom experience that you were wanting to talk about. And unfortunately, we stifled you and we said, "Mark, hold that thought for 1 second." As much as we wanted to hear it, we absolutely needed to move on with that. So tell us about your experience.
So that was my first burn in the forest, but I had taken mushrooms once previous and had a really, really great time, and just kind of had a lot of lights go off. And I thought to myself, like, this is interesting. And so the whole plan with my friends was we're going to do mushrooms on Saturday at Burn in the Forest, and we went out onto. At that point in time, it was on a riverbed. It's on the Fraser River in Harrison, but it's quite seasonal, so you can walk out onto the rocks. And I took 3.5 grams, which is considered like a psychedelic dose. But a lot of people, especially when they start, they don't take that much.
Can you walk us through what? Okay, so where do you don't have to tell us your source, but like where do you get them, and what's the process of taking them?
So I had a friend who is well connected in that way. Get them for me. I was actually just talking to him a couple of days ago and saying like how just his presence in my life, because I'm very sentimental because I'm moving, right? Just his presence in my life was such a catalyst for my own transformation, especially with psychedelics. So I got some mushrooms through him, and it kind of depends. Like it all depends on the person and the experience, right? I knew that I wanted to find out more about what the mushroom experience was about. Mm-hmm. And so I was inclined to take a decent dose. It wasn't about just having a good time, even though I was expecting to have a good time, right? I was also very, very invested and interested in like what that meant and what was behind that veil, so to speak.
Like your own personal, like, hey, if I take this, what will I experience personally? Is that kind of what
and I also just wanted to get some more context into understanding what the mushroom experience was like, because like I said, I had done them once previous, and had a like unbelievably opening experience, but this was just totally off the end in comparison to that. So I took 3.5 grams dried. You get them dried in a bag a lot of the time, and I rolled them up into an Eat More bar and ate that because they don't taste very good.
Okay.
So
you just eat them?
Yeah, you just eat them.
Okay.
Yeah, and some people prepare them different ways. You can make tea. That's generally my way that I'll do it now, but we'll get there. But I don't really take a lot of mushrooms anymore now. But so we were coming up and we were hanging out on the riverbed, and everybody had taken some dose of mushrooms. And we were throwing rocks into a tire that was like down on a bank. And it just became like very, very engaging. It was like this competition to see who could get a rock into the tire. And whenever anybody would get a rock into the tire, everybody would cheer, right? But it wasn't like we were like, I have this many points or anything. It was very playful, right? Yeah. It was very playful. And we were all kind of giggling and whatever. And then I started to feel like, kind of body intense. And I was like, okay, this is done, and I'm going to get up and go for a walk. And I was walking around and I was looking at the rocks in the riverbed, and the same exact pattern of rocks, the exact same amount of rocks that looked exactly the same, where I looked in one spot and then I turned my eyes and looked in another, and they were there too. Mm-hmm. And then they were there, and then they were there. And I kept walking, and it was the exact same pattern, just like boop, 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 the exact same 10 rocks. And I was just like, what the fuck? I just totally like just boggled by this happenstance, because like you've never seen anything like it. Because it's like reality was like showing me this weird thing. And then I looked at these like little blades and tufts of grass that were coming out in between the rocks, right, that I hadn't even noticed when we were walking around before. But now that I was tripping, they were quite prominent, and they literally,
you were like almost perceiving more.
Yeah, like definitely, yeah. And so these tufts of grass, I looked at a whole bunch of them all together, and then all of a sudden they changed, and they all looked identical to one another. And then they started flashing in and out of existence.
Oh my God.
Right? They were like there, and then not there, and then somewhere else. And I was just like, wow. So this is unbelievable. like what is going on?
Yeah. Right? And that's when it hit you. You're like, okay.
Well, that's what I was like. I knew I was coming up, and I was very like loosey-goosey body weird, right? And I saw my buddy David, who I mentioned earlier, laying on the ground a ways away.
Right.
And I went over and I laid beside him, and we communicated without speaking words. And I looked up at the sky, and I saw these crystalline shapes shift underneath the clouds. and they were connecting to like a grid of white light.
Oh my God.
And then they like came down towards me a little bit, and they became a little bit brighter, and I closed my eyes. And then I have to tell part of this story from not my own perspective, because I blacked out, right? I was gone for I don't know how long, right? And my friends, they all knew that I was gone, right? I was not there. My body was there, but I wasn't there. And they were like, Mark, and I was just like, just eyes closed, lying there, right? Breathing, so I was fine, right?
Right.
And so after however long I was out, because I don't even know, I kind of came back to a sense of my body and my consciousness, and I sat up. And then this is when I got deep closed eye visuals. So if you don't know anything about psychedelic experiences, there are open eye visuals and then there are closed eye visuals. And closed eye visuals are like when, you know, a lot of people describe them kind of similarly or maybe a little bit different, but you can just basically see things with your eyes closed that are very much there and totally unique, right? And so they were giant fractal paisleys that were multi-dimensional colors, like shifting and forming and coming out of nothingness with my eyes closed.
So sorry to interrupt you. So to put this into perspective for a noob, so like I'm closing my eyes, like as in like you like just picturing something in your brain, or like actually closing your eyes and you are seeing it.
You are seeing it. It isn't like it's very visual, right? I'm slightly on like the aphantic spectrum, so I don't when you say close your eyes and think of an apple, I don't see like an apple like totally. I see little bits, right?
Right.
Or fragments or kind of ideas of an apple. But this was like, no, I was seeing it with my eyes closed, like it was there, right?
That's cool.
And it was so physically there that when I opened my eyes for brief periods of time and closed them, it merged with my body, right?
Oh, man.
So there was absolutely no separation between my body and what I could see with my eyes open and closed. And it was all fractal energy colors that was like connecting everything, right?
Whoa.
Yeah, it's like, it's really, when I say how to describe it out loud, like understand that like the words, they make sense, but it's not really actually what it is. It's the best way you can get it across, right?
Yeah.
It's not really translatable.
Without somebody actually experiencing it,
they
would actually know.
Well, sure. Yeah, definitely.
To...
But, you know, I believe that these kinds of transcendent states of consciousness are not only accessible via any kind of psychedelic. You can access this through other forms, right? Mm-hmm. Some people do breath work and meditation, or, you know, fasting, or abstinence. There's all kinds of ways that you can access these like different states of consciousness.
Right. Do you feel like you can get to the same state of consciousness as you would on mushrooms, as you would with any of those other things that you mentioned?
I've definitely practiced a lot of meditation since then. That like really birthed a huge meditation practice in my life. I like cemented the practice.
Can you tell us a little bit about that? Because I know meditation is something that I've always been interested in. Just
sure. Would you like me to finish the story?
Please. Yeah. Sorry.
Okay. And then I'll get to the meditation for sure.
Yeah.
Because they go hand in hand for me, definitely.
Yeah.
So after that moment, because that was like a very brief moment where I was becoming aware of these new things that were happening. There were also like flooding sensations of like energy and deep, like at first it was a lot of confusion. I was kind of like really hitting the emotions. It's hard on your psyche. It's hard on your ego.
Did you ever feel scared? Or like,
it was very, very intense.
Oh, okay.
They were like it was so intense. I was screaming. Like my friends, they tell me, like whenever we get onto the topic, they kind of poke fun a little bit because it's a funny experience. I was literally like, you wouldn't want me to reenact it, like totally, because Aaron upstairs would get concerned that something was wrong. But I was like fucking screaming, like, oh my God, oh my God. So totally like mind blown, like absolutely mind blown, because of how fucking crazy beautiful it was and how unbelievably like impactful it was as an experience on me and my body and how it felt. And, you know, there was a part of me that I remember saying, I was like, well, like, why do I get to experience this? Like, why a little old me?
Oh, wow.
Right? Why do I get to see this? Like, this is just unbelievable.
Right.
Like, it was this pure connection to nature, right? And yeah, like, it's the whole experience is a foundational cornerstone to a lot of my adult life, right? Because it was so impactful. But yeah, there was that other part of me that was like, why me? Like, why just little old me? And then the emotion and the feeling was telling me, like, because, right? Because, and that was hard to take, right? Anyway, it got like increasingly more intense, and it seemed to pulse in directions, and I would have to. It was like asking me things. It was communicative. It was a presence, right? That was around me, and it was, yeah, like very, very like alien in some ways, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so then, you know, I had like everything kind of opened up and turned like brilliantly different colors. It got even more intense until it was time for everybody was kind of tired with Mark being totally blown out of his mind. Right. So they like helped me get up. And, you know, this whole time my eyes were closed because I was enjoying looking at all the closed eye visuals. And then I had to open my eyes. And in that time, which was probably, I don't know, to me, I was outside of time and space for a good portion of it. So I don't know how long it took, but it was probably like an hour or two, right? A trip only lasts about 6 hours on mushrooms. And my buddies kind of like got me out of it, like got me standing. And in that time, my main buddy, Matt, that I was hanging with, he had face paint of a skull on. And before I started tripping, he didn't have that. And so then I opened my eyes, and the first thing I saw was his skull face on his face.
Oh, my God.
And it like lifted off of his face.
Oh, my.
And I was like, oh, okay. Like, Matt, I love you. You're my best friend, but I can't look at you right now. I can't look at you. He was like, okay, yeah, man, I get it, right? And we walked back to the party. And then, I remember we went to this tea tent. It's called the Empress. Shout out to the Empress, if anybody from them is listening. I had some tea, and I remember just being like absolutely blitzed. I was seeing these lattices of color over top of reality, and everything was like connected, and I had streamers, you know, I put my hand out in front of me, and trails of my hand would follow behind it.
Interacting with yourself on it.
Yeah. And, awesome. And, you know, like I poured myself a cup of tea, and I picked up the cup of tea, and I thought to myself, like I am so messed on these mushrooms right now, and I was able to perform like this, like, you know, beautiful
task.
Why do you think you're able to do that?
So I think, like, you know, I definitely since then have learned a lot about mushrooms, a lot about psychedelics, and a lot about like the psychedelic experience. I'm definitely nowhere near an expert, but I do know a good amount, and I do have some personal experience. But Terence McKenna, if you don't know who Terence McKenna is, I was just checking out some of his stuff because he was kind of one of the first people in like the modern Western world, at least, to like really, really start talking about and publicizing stuff about psychedelic experience and mushrooms in particular. And he talks about those kinds of experiences. What was your question that led to this again?
It was about meditation.
No, right before I started talking about
how you were able to do like that.
One of his theories, and also one theory that is also brought up with Paul Stamets sometimes, because Paul Stamets, he's one of the leading mycologists of today. He was friends with Terence McKenna. Is the stoned ape hypothesis. They call it a hypothesis now, not a theory, because a theory has to be kind of proven. Right? Mm-hmm. But yeah, the stoned ape hypothesis, which is that the psychological and like brain development of early humans before they were human, like when we were like apes, basically, was catalyzed and affected positively and changed via ingestion of psychedelic mushrooms. So like apes descending from the trees and moving out into the plains consumed mushrooms, and psilocybin mushrooms, or psilocybe cubensis, changed the way that they experienced reality and developed spatial recognition through that, and also developed language through that. And that's just, it's a hypothesis, right? But I really, really think that, psilocybin and psilocybin mushrooms are a key to psychological development. They're, a lot of the stuff that's studied about effects on them or effects on people from them nowadays is like, especially with males, they tend to get a certain type of visual acuity for movement that they didn't normally have. You get very, very present. There's a study that leads a lot of people to believe that one of the main effects is that you experience fear differently. And so you have a certain type of courage, which obviously would have been very advantageous in like early hominid days, right? Mm-hmm. So I think that's part of it, right? Like, definitely I've had mushroom experiences where I am not coordinated. I cannot move. I should not be doing anything. Right. Nobody should be driving on mushrooms.
Right.
You got to actually send me some of those, because I took psych, so like that's kind of right up my alley. I would love to, like, I'm not saying I still, look up peer-reviewed articles, but like that would be something that I would, because I find that fascinating that you can kind of perhaps link that, to studies to show that, like, hey, like, there is stuff with language and there is stuff with self-actualization. That's so cool.
It's hard because people in the psychedelic community have known this for a long time, right? Like in the 60s and 70s, before the huge push on the war on drugs, and especially when psychedelics were put into that, LSD in particular was seen as like a strong psychoactive drug, or whatever you want to call it, for psychiatry and psychologists. Like, it was being studied a lot, and people were very interested in it for a lot of reasons, right? But it got really controlled, especially in the States, right?
I feel like that LSD kind of got stymied a bit, especially because of the trials they used to do on people, and I think public perception of it, I think I think kind of the public perception too, people controlled the public perception, and it allowed the government to kind of, the U.S. government anyway, to kind of hide that, and then eventually it just became this thing that nobody talked about and that nobody wanted to talk about,
right? And
it became so suppressed, and then now more recently with people talking about it, like yourself, and even someone, I'll just throw a name out there, like Joe Rogan.
Sure.
Who's constantly talking about it on his podcast, and the fact that these files from the previous time, what was that project called? It was in the 60s. There was a name for it where they gave people LSD, and they
in the States.
It was in the States, Project CIA, X or something. I don't know.
It's not X, but I know what you're talking about.
It's something along those lines. Yeah. But it is interesting because it did seem like it was suppressed for so long.
Right. Well, the counterculture movement has always been alive with psychedelics, right? Since back then, right? So that's always still there. And I think definitely nowadays people are more comfortable talking about it. Like I had to kind of question even myself before I came and talked to you guys. I was like, well, what kind of stuff do I want to talk about? And I was like, well, I'm comfortable talking about burn. And then I thought, like, maybe I'll talk about some psychedelic stuff too, because it's profoundly changed and affected my life, and in a positive way. And not all of my psychedelic experiences have been fun. It's not always a fun time.
That's actually interesting, because I was gonna ask, like, because I feel like, and again, I'm tying in the psychological thing. Sorry, guys, but like, in my opinion, and maybe you can tell me, because I have zero experience. So like, in terms of that, so I would argue, like, for a lot of people too, like, I guess my lived experiences already versus Mike's lived experiences versus Mark's lived experiences. If we were all to experience that, like, I'm assuming, like, our perceptions of what we experience, would they all be different, or is there kind of a similar thing that people experience, or would everything kind of be totally tailored to your already lived experiences?
Great question. So, like, a lot of that is still people don't know, right? But there are lots of similar things, right? There are lots of things that many people report experiencing the same kinds of things. And so to me, like, it's a crime to not document those experiences and understand, like, how it affects people. One of the things that really gets brought up quite a bit in a lot of psychedelic the psychedelic community is the concept of set and setting before you take any psychedelic. So your setting obviously is where you are, right? And it asks you to be mindful of that, like, and understand and think about, like, well, where am I going to be when I'm high, right? Or when I'm tripping, right? Where am I going to be when I'm taking this? And if you're going to be someplace that's like hyper stimulating and lots of strangers coming up to you,
Right.
then like maybe, and you're somebody that's like very kind of socially awkward, that's probably kind of a tough situation for you.
Yeah.
But maybe you love strangers, and that'll be good for you. So that's an appropriate setting, right? Especially first time, you should probably be in a place that's familiar and comfortable for you.
Well, if we ever do it, we'll be with you. So that'll be.
And then set is other factors, and you take into account like your own psychological factors, right? Did I just have a really intense argument with my mom? Did we just like yell at each other or whatever, and now I feel bad? Probably not a good time to take some mushrooms, right?
Yeah.
Am I like really, really anxious and stressed and frustrated and concerned and dealing with other, mental health problems or challenges? Probably not a good time to be taking mushrooms, right? Do I have a history of schizophrenia or anything like that? Probably not the kind of person that should be taking mushrooms, right? You're not for everybody.
Right.
So it's important to state those things and remember that.
Do you feel like a lot of people take that into account though when they do them? I mean, do you feel that people are self-aware of those certain facts about themselves before they do that for the majority, or do you feel like a lot of people jump into these experiences?
I don't really know for sure. I've definitely seen both. I have lots of friends who are very, very, intentional about their psychedelic use. And then I know lots of people who it's just about having a fun laughing time. And like this kind of stuff doesn't even really interest them, and they don't feel the same way about mushrooms.
Right.
In particular. They just take them and they giggle and they have a great time and stuff looks funny. Yeah. Right? Mm-hmm. But they don't have like a closed eye visual kind of a thing or anything like that, right? But I think can
everyone experience that? Does everyone have the potential to experience like what you've experienced?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's accessible to everybody, and that's accessible to everybody whether or not, in my belief, whether or not you're on a psychedelic. I think that to remove the veil between like you and reality or you and nature, like that's accessible to everybody. And I think even more so, like it's becoming even more so accessible to people.
Do you think when you actually do take mushrooms, do you think it's a conscious decision to experience those experiences, or do you feel like it's something you have to be willing to accept? I don't know if I'm wording that correctly, but
it's a great question.
Yeah,
because there is a huge nature of the experience after like certain dose levels that you don't have control. Like, you got to give it up, and you better give it up fast, or it's going to be a bad time for you if you're trying to grab on and like try to like steer the ship, because they're waves that are way bigger than you. Right. Wow. So you got to just kind of there are dose levels where you do have to really let go.
Right.
And then there are dose levels where like you can be really kind of controlling over your experience. Mm-hmm. And I've microdosed before too. I find a lot of use in that, because a microdose is below threshold. You don't experience any psychedelic or psychological effects. Right. It's very, very minute amounts, and it's basically like a supplement at that point.
Okay. What do you experience?
Go about your day.
What do you experience when you microdose?
So I do when I do it, I don't do it all the time. Maybe once or twice a year for a month stint, and I'll do Paul Stamets's regimen, which is you also take B vitamins, and ideally you're taking some lion's mane mushroom also, because it's about reconnecting synapses in your brain. Psilocybin turns into psilocin in your brain or in your body after the breakdown process, and psilocin is a tryptamine, and it sits on your serotonin receptors. Yeah. And so it basically like pretends to be serotonin in your brain for a little while. And what that can do is get parts of your brain talking to other parts of your brain that your brain doesn't normally talk to, right? That's why, a lot of people also report kind of synesthetic experiences on mushrooms or on LSD,
like tasting letters or hearing
or seeing sound. Right?
Yeah. Really
is a big one. Yeah, you see colors coming out of speakers and stuff like that.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Can you experience that without microdosing as well?
Or no, so that wouldn't be in a microdose level.
I see. Okay.
But so yeah, because of the nature of psilocin and how it connects your brain, the theory, right, is that, or the hypothesis, I guess, because it's not directly proven, is that microdosing would help your brain talk to itself. So in ways that it doesn't normally talk to itself. And so Paul Stamets's regimen is 5 days on, 2 days off, and below threshold dose. I take normally about 0.15 of a gram, which is like a piece of a dried mushroom the size of maybe 3 grains of rice.
Oh, wow.
Right? It's very small.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's super cool. So it seems like there's a lot of different things that can be done with that, especially either having an out of mind or out of body experience. But I guess it's really kind of how you've described it, is that it's almost all body and all mind. Like it's kind of not the way that I should really be describing it, because it's so physically and mentally encompassing everything. And
then
spiritually,
don't forget that.
Sorry, yeah, spiritually. And then like you're saying, like, coming at it from the supplement side of things, where you're just kind of like mentally kind of resetting. That's super cool.
Yeah. It's and you'd probably be really interested in some of the studies that are coming out about mushrooms and people with late stage terminal cancer. They know they're going to die, and there's an organization called MAPS that is doing controlled studies and tests and giving these people psychedelic mushrooms, and they're really, really promising evidence for end of life, psychological rehabilitation. These people are coming to terms with their own death, months before they're dying, and able to then live their life fully before they die.
Right.
And that's really, really special. But yeah, so I think mushrooms are important. There's like a lot of places in the States that are already decriminalizing them. There's counties in the States that you can't get arrested if you have mushrooms on you and that kind of thing. So that's cool. It's definitely getting looked at a lot more, and I think that's really important and good. And I think there's lots of good out of it. And at the same time, again, it's not for everybody.
Yeah.
Right? Do your research. Don't just think because some dude came on a podcast and was talking about that you should go out and do it yourself. But think about it and examine your own kind of shit. And and again, that was a really powerful experience in particular. Probably definitely the biggest one. But I also had a very, very what a lot of people would call a bad trip, right?
Sure.
I don't think there are good trips or bad trips. I just think there's trips, right?
Right.
Because good or bad can be whatever you perceive it to be.
Sure, yeah. And also, that trip, the trip that I'm talking about, that was what a lot of people would consider bad. It was very, very difficult. But I wouldn't have, if I had the choice to have had that experience or not, I would choose to have had it.
I know earlier you talked about you'd mentioned people that just had an argument with their mom, or people that were feeling anxious or stressed, that they probably shouldn't do it.
My problem was that I had drank a lot of alcohol the day before.
Nice.
And was hungover and in the wrong mindset and very lonely, and it was probably 40 degrees outside.
Oh.
And I was exhausted. I probably slept for 2 hours the night before.
Yeah.
It was just stupid. I just should not have taken them. And, I got told a thing or two, during that trip, right? I got a finger wagged at me, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, it could have been a lot worse, but it sucked. It basically was it felt, because I knew that my time was all distorted, it felt like 3 solid months of the worst stomach bug you've ever had.
Whoa.
Even though I knew and kept telling myself it feels like a long time, but really it's only a couple of hours. I would just say that, really, in a couple of hours this will be over, but it just feels like weeks.
Right.
So that was really lame.
I guess before kind of moving on, I wanted to ask one thing actually, and it was like, because I have no idea, but like, are there harmful side effects to it? Could you get sick from taking that kind of stuff? Like, are there what would the side effects be?
And another thing to branch off what Ben was saying, you were saying people experience different things.
Mm-hmm.
Can somebody who takes the same dose, let's say you take two of the exact same person, take the same dose,
can be very
they're
different.
Probably experiencing different things.
Yeah, they can be very different. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because people have different tolerances too. Like my buddy Matt, nobody's going to know him just because I say the word Matt, unless they know me.
Matt, and his last name is unknown.
Maybe I shouldn't just be talking about other people's experiences.
Yeah.
But yeah, different tolerances are definitely a big thing. Let's glaze over that fact.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Interesting.
Yeah.
Cool.
But like, are there?
Oh yes. So
can you get sick from them? Or
there's one thing that I have found that's called HPPD, I think that's what it's called, hyper psychedelic persisting disorder or something like that. HPPD.
Okay.
And basically, some people, it's very, very rare. They'll take psychedelics and then afterwards they'll wind up still experiencing psychedelic effects in their regular life. There's a couple of cases that I've read where like it sounds like that's a very unfortunate circumstance for that person, like rights are lefts and lefts are rights kind of stuff, and that can be really tough on a human being, obviously. And then other things that I've read is like, well, you I don't know, like sometimes I wonder if I have it, but it's just that I don't care.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, but it really changes a lot. You know. At least for me, it changed a lot, even visually, about how I experienced life. And, I don't really remember what it was like before, so I have nothing to really judge against anymore.
Right. Which is interesting because you lived your life so long without it. And now it's like you're saying, it's interesting. You just said, I don't have anything to judge, where it's funny because somebody that's just listening in would be like, well, that's odd because didn't you just live like your whole time without it?
Yeah.
But in a weird way, yeah, but for you, it's probably just so profound.
Yeah, that's kind of a huge process of transformation, and that was a big motivator for the Crystal Project. Cycle it all the way back to the beginning of the chat. There you go. Nice little circle. Yeah,
beautiful.
That project, the Chrysalis, we called it Fragile Crystal, and I was really, really wanting to have something that kind of embodied a little bit of those same emotions and feelings about personal transformation and how and I really liked the kind of anthropomorphization of the butterfly going into the chrysalis and the whole theme of Burn in the Forest that year was chrysalis, so it was very on point, and it was great. I think the word is out there. You can change your life. Everybody can do that. That's accessible to anybody. But you, in your circumstance, might have a way harder time than other people. But I think nature is always showing us that that's accessible to you. And I think if it's easy for you, then you should help other people do that.
Mm-hmm.
And if you want to change, some people don't want to change. But
yeah,
cool.
Yeah. That was a good way to kind of wrap that part up. That was amazing.
That was really well put. And I think honestly what's going to stick with me too is how you just said, because we kind of said off air as well. You said, like, why am I just allowed to experience this? Which is such a genuine kind of thing to say. But guys, I got to paint a picture here as well. So I came back down because I grabbed a drink, and Mark's got his banjo and Mike's got his guitar. I'm just a lowly singer. I mean, they both sang, but they both play guitar.
So you play guitar too?
No, I can play a bit of piano.
Oh yeah, that's right.
What I will say though is, Ben, you have a very good voice.
Oh, thank you.
So one thing that you'll have in addition to this is your vocals are spectacular.
Well,
thank you.
I don't know if you know this, but for grad, when we graduated, I was voted at the grad ceremony most likely to wind up on Canadian Idol as somebody who thinks they can sing.
No way.
That's awesome.
No way. That's in the yearbook?
That's in the yearbook, and that was the
Dig
year
that
that I
out.
played The Beast in Beauty and the Beast, which
Oh,
is
nice.
obviously a musical.
We haven't even
And
gone
I
into your...
I sang
Yeah.
that whole thing.
That's hilarious.
So I think they were like definitely being like, Mark, you sucked.
As,
Yeah.
I mean, well, I did come second place in Clayton Idol when I was in grade 12.
Yeah.
But no, just
Yeah,
kidding.
yeah.
But So, did you guys want to show us something about your guitars? Or?
I want to hear Mark play us a little riff here. I think that'd be really interesting.
Guess like sing up to the mic too.
Yep, let's go.
Should I do the same thing?
Yeah, count us in.
1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Almost heaven, West Virginia, Blue Ridge Mountains, Shenandoah River. Life is older than the trees, younger than the mountains, blowing like a breeze. Country road, take me home to the place I belong, West Virginia, mountain mama, take me home, country road. All my memories gather round her, minus ladies ranging to blue water, dark and dusty, painted on the sky, misty taste of moonshine, teardrops in my eye, country road, take me home to the place I belong, West Virginia, mountain mama, take me home, country road. I hear a voice in the morning hours, she calls me. The radio reminds me of my home far away. Driving down the road, I get a feeling that I should have been home yesterday. Country road, take me home to the place I belong, West Virginia, mountain mama, take me home, country road, take me home to the place I belong, West Virginia, mountain mama, take me home, country road, take me home, now country road, take me home, now country road. Sweet.
All right. Well, we just recorded some little bit of music. We tried to find the best sound setting, but I don't think it really encapsulated what we did because it's really hard with the Blue Yeti in a small space. But we hope that you guys do like what we did record. So
I had a lot of fun playing together no matter what. So
Yeah.
it doesn't really matter.
It was
What's
good.
I'm all about inclusion.
Are you?
totally off topic.
Are you really though?
Yeah. By the way, Mark, thanks for the beer, man.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, thanks for drinking all of it.
Hey, no problem. What is that? We had a nice conversation, and you're slighting me. What's that all about? To be fair, though, you did have amazing banjo skills, and maybe I'm just feeling a little inadequate now.
Thank you for the pizza, and thank you for the cookies, and thank you for having me on. It was a fun conversation for sure. We didn't get to like tons of other stuff that we could have talked about for sure, but I was saying like, how much can you get out of one person in an hour, right? That's true.
Well, you know what else is cool too? Like you're gonna be in Toronto, but like we can still Skype you in.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, right? If you ever want to have me on again, I'd be happy to come on, talk about a ton of other things or whatever people find interesting.
Absolutely,
we'd love to have you back on.
Yeah.
Although, but if he's on Skype, he won't be able to give us beer.
That's true.
So should we just scrap the whole thing and just say just one episode? And
should we tell him? I'll get it delivered to your house from the thing. Do they still do delivery?
I hope so. We'll make it happen.
I used to do that as a job.
Oh right, yeah. That's for another one. We'll have to get into that another time.
Mike wouldn't know. You're talking to someone that has a bidet. So.
Oh right, yeah. So
life changing.
Well, what do you mean? He doesn't. Yeah. So he doesn't buy his own beer like a common pleb.
Yeah, I don't. What is the wait? Hold on. What does the beer have to? What does the bidet have to do with the beer? I'm trying to say I'm like, I see. You're being a dick.
I'll just sit here sipping my vodka soda while you guys have the beers.
It's over your head. What a rude comment. Yeah. It's over your head. Can you get any slimy?
You have to end the cast with
scummier
a couple chirps. Otherwise, it's not a Cider Ranch podcast.
That's what it's all about.
Yeah.
Dip it in.
How about would you like to do the sign off this time?
No, you go ahead. You do it all the time. So
you've
done it in every episode so far, so I just want to hear you end it off.
Yeah, let's see if you interrupt this one. Anyways, we want to thank Mark for coming on. It was awesome to have him and to jam with him and to hear everything that he is experiencing, especially with all the thing he's doing. I love the conversation, and so I want to thank all of our chicken tendies and pizza crust for dipping into one more Cider Ranch. That is episode, 15 now? 15 done. All right, guys. Thanks so much. Thanks, Mark.